Hey guys, welcome back again to Men Against Nonsense. We're checking out some more Jordan Peterson. Let's go.
My question is, what is the antidote towards toxic masculinity?
Well, the antidote is responsible masculinity. And what does responsible mean? It means, well, if you're responsible, then you're trying to do what's honest
Oh, I like
first.
that. Honest
And
first.
careful with your speech and your actions. You're careful with your speech in that you don't say things that you know to be false, and you're careful in your actions.
So essentially, what Jordan Peterson is saying, you're not a liar, right? So I think sometimes we get caught up in this idea of like lying to cover your own butt or lying to make people feel comfortable. And it never works. It actually typically turns out to bite you in the end because then when the truth is exposed, you're seen to be less than honest or just categorized as blatantly dishonest, right? And so when you have that stigma on your character, uh, it not only affects you, but it affects your family. If you have a wife and children, if you're seen as a dishonest person, I mean that affects them. It's gonna it's gonna trickle down. That dishonesty has a trickle down effect, even if economics doesn't. I'm just joking about that. But hey, listen, you gotta be honest, right? Because dishonesty just leads to chaos and nonsense, and you don't want that. Okay, let's keep going.
So that you don't have to lie about what you do. That's a good start. And then the next thing would be that you're capable of taking responsibility for yourself at least, so that once you're an adult, no one else has to bend over backwards to ensure that you don't unduly suffer in the world.
And I think what Jordan Peterson really means by that is no one um, some you'll fall on hard times. It happens, right? But you should be able to take responsibility for your own actions to say, "Hey, I'm down and out, but I'm gonna get up. I'm gonna pick myself up. I'm gonna do something about it." No man, okay, no man against nonsense would should ever be dependent on another man. Like dependent. It's one day to receive some assistance in an emergency. It's another thing to be dependent on someone else. Right? That's not taking responsibility for oneself. And if you don't you can't take responsibility for yourself. We definitely can't expect you to take responsibility for your own family. So now, if you won't take care of yourself, be responsible for yourself, and we have to foot the bill for you, then we have to foot the bill for your family as well if you decide to have a family, right? And what's honorable about having other people foot the bill for what you've created? There is no honor in that.
So that's responsibility for yourself. And then if you get halfway good at that, well, then you might think about taking on the responsibility of a family and contributing to your community and doing all those things in a harmonious manner. And that's obviously the antidote to toxic masculinity, which is not a phrase I would generally use.
Right.
I just think about it as, what would you call it? I think sinful behavior is a much more accurate
No,
representation.
I can go with that,
personally.
Jordan.
But
I can go
it's
for that.
honesty and responsibility. And I do think about it as a function of harmony. I got that a lot from reading Jean Piaget, whose work was a psychological extension of Kant's categorical imperative, because Kant believed that you should act in a manner such that if the way you acted became a universal, that would be beneficial. But Piaget formalized that very nicely, showing that one of the bases for the emergence of a system of genuine ethics was an iterable form of reciprocity.
I said that didn't cover really a toxic masculinity, right? Because
Yes, it's dealing with dealing with the
you
principle
just
of reciprocity.
No, you just said that you have to be honest and responsible as a man.
What precisely, since we're going to pursue this,
What does she have a problem with?
What precisely is toxic masculinity, as opposed to, say, toxic femininity or toxic humanity? What exactly are you asking me about?
I really want to know what you like, how you would describe toxic masculinity, because podcast.
No, I want you to define what toxic masculinity constitutes. Since we're going to define things so carefully, let's do it.
Okay. I think that the moment when you kind of, I have a hard time to kind of describe it in English. Let's say.
Is it the English, or does she not know what she's talking
kind
about?
of go over a boundary that kind of neglects the freedom of the opposite, well, gender or whatsoever. So that's toxic masculinity, and that you kind of have.
But
this
that would also be toxic femininity.
Well, may I like finish my sentence,
Sure.
please? Thank you. And then also, I lost my sentence now. But no, I will be back. I'm back. What was the sense that? Yeah, can someone help me here in the audience?
So, I mean, this is my first time listening to this, but she needs help. She needs help. She wants someone to come in and finish her sentence, and I'm not belittling her. She obviously is of English is not her primary language. That's obvious, right? However, if you're going to use these English terms, then you should have a definition of these terms. Especially if you're really trying to corner someone about a particular topic, you should have a definition that you subscribe to, right? And she doesn't really have one. But she mentions about when, at the point when someone, I guess, is oppressive to the other genders. She wanted to say sex at first, but then she switched and said gender. But the other genders, oppressive to the other genders, freedoms, right? Freedoms. That's another kind of loose word we use. We say freedoms. And what is a freedom at that? What are you actually free to do when we think about that? Most people don't even think about that. That's male or female. Like, what are you actually free to do? The best version I've heard about freedom and rights, right? More specifically, rights, because the term freedom is a little too broad, but rights, right? What do you have the right to do? Walter Williams, a famous economist, he says you have the right to do what's right. That's it. And I loved that when I heard it. And so when we talk about freedom, it's too loose. It's what do you have the right to do? Well, you really only have the right to do what is right, not something that's wrong. Now we have to figure out what is right and wrong, and who determines what's right and wrong. That's another conversation for another day. But who determines what is right and wrong? Where do we get an objective? Can we get an objective right and wrong? And many of you probably already know what I'm alluding to.
Okay, so before we move on, let me point something out. That I was willing to undertake this line of discussion, allowing for the possibility that the category of toxic masculinity had some content, right? But if we're going to pursue that line of reasoning and quibble about the answer, then we're certainly going to quibble about the definition that's embedded in the question. And so part of what's happened in our discourse is that we're required ethically to assume a priori, merely out of politeness, that the utterance toxic masculinity actually constitutes a meaningful phrase. And if you push it, you find very rapidly that it doesn't, because it's very, very, very difficult to define, and definitions actually matter. So if it's a matter of transgressing against the boundaries of gender-appropriate behavior,
right.
First of all, that indicates that there's something universal and normative about gender-appropriate behavior, which is something that people who push the idea of toxic masculinity generally tend not to presume. And second...
And so, in case that's a little too wordy for some of you, what he's saying is that in order to claim that there's something called toxic masculinity, which I guess infers that the masculinity has gone too far, he's saying that presumes that there is some universal norms of what masculinity is, but people who espouse or promote the idea of toxic masculinity don't believe that there's any universal norm of what masculinity is or femininity is, i.e., transgenderism, right? So he's saying that there's tremendous leaps in logic to even have a discussion about toxic masculinity when you don't believe in universal norms of what gender roles, right? So that means a man couldn't be toxically masculine if there's no universal norm for what masculine is, right? But I mean, I like Jordan Peterson. I really like the way he's thoughtful about these concepts. So thoughtful enough to not even argue, but to say, hey, you have no base. You have no basis for your argument, no foundation, because you can't define it because the word is opposed to your own logic and thinking. Right?
Just as likely to happen among women as among men, in which case it's not toxic masculinity.
So anyway, guys, check Jordan Peterson out. I just think we really have to get to a space where, rather than debating folks about these concepts and these ideas that they want to promote, that we sit back and find the logical fallacies or the leaps in logic in their questions and their statements, and just point them out, not because you're trying to be more intelligent, but rather that you're trying to get them to reconsider the fact that they haven't thought this through. This is just something that they feel rather than they have evidence for, right? But anyway, you guys, men against nonsense. Be a man, be masculine, and if necessary, be more than a man, right? More than what they want you to be. That's what I mean by that. I like to say give it 110% or give it 10% more. I'll catch you guys on the next time.